Hey friends, welcome back. Tonight, we're keeping things simple, just me in my Minecraft world, sharing some of the most fascinating Reddit stories I've found. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's enjoy this time together. So, I honestly don't even know how to begin this story without sounding like I'm living in some kind of bizarre relationship purgatory. But here we are. I'm Avery. I'm 25, and I work as a graphic designer for a marketing agency in Portland. For the past year and a half, I've been dating Logan, who's 27 and works as a software developer. On paper, we're perfect together. We share the same sense of humor, love the same obscure indie bands, can spend entire weekends binge-watching Netflix documentaries about serial killers, and he makes me laugh until my stomach hurts. But apparently, having a great relationship isn't enough when your boyfriend is emotionally married to his ex-girlfriend and thinks that's totally normal. Logan and I met through mutual friends at a house party. One of those perfect meet-cute scenarios where we ended up talking in the kitchen for 3 hours about everything from terrible horror movies to our shared obsession with craft coffee. He was charming, funny, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me as a person rather than just trying to get me into bed. We had our first official date a week later, and I was smitten pretty much immediately. The first few months were honestly amazing. Logan was attentive, thoughtful, and seemed as excited about building something real as I was. He'd text me good morning every day, plan creative dates, remember little things I'd mentioned in passing, and integrate me into his friend group without any weirdness. I felt like I'd finally found someone who was on the same page about wanting a serious, committed relationship. But there were little things that seemed off. Nothing major, just tiny red flags that I brushed aside because everything else was so good, like how his phone was always buzzing with notifications that he'd quickly dismiss without really looking at, or how he'd sometimes get this distant, sad expression while scrolling through social media, then immediately put his phone away when he noticed me watching, or how he'd occasionally reference my friend in stories about his past without ever mentioning this friend's name or gender. I'm not normally a suspicious person, honestly. I tend to be way too trusting, if anything. But after a few months, I started noticing patterns. Logan would get texts at weird hours that would make him immediately pick up his phone with this urgent, concerned expression. He'd step away to take certain phone calls, claiming they were work stuff, but then seeming emotionally drained afterward. And he had this habit of being extra affectionate with me right after these mysterious conversations, like he was overcompensating for something. The truth came out 6 months into our relationship in the most anticlimactic way possible. We were having a lazy Sunday morning in bed, and Logan's phone kept buzzing on the nightstand. After the 5th notification in 10 minutes, I jokingly said, "Wow, Someone really needs your attention this morning. Logan picked up his phone, looked at the screen, and his whole demeanor changed. He got that same distant, concerned expression I'd noticed before, and started typing a long response to whoever was messaging him. "Everything okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned that maybe there was some kind of emergency. "Yeah, it's just Madison having a rough morning. She's going through some stuff with her job situation." Madison, a name I'd never heard before, despite 6 months of dating and countless conversations about friends, work, family, and life in general. "Who's Madison?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual and not accusatory. Logan looked up from his phone with this expression like a deer in headlights. "Oh, she's my ex from college. We stayed friends after we broke up, and she's been having a hard time lately." His ex-girlfriend was texting him at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning about her job situation, and he was responding with the kind of urgent attention most people reserve for family emergencies. I felt this weird knot form in my stomach, but I tried to be reasonable about it. People can be friends with their exes, right? It doesn't automatically mean anything inappropriate is happening. Mature adults can maintain platonic friendships with people they used to date. "Oh, okay," I said, probably not as casually as I intended. "How long were you guys together?" "3 years," Logan replied, already turning his attention back to his phone. "We dated all through college and for about a year after graduation. The breakup was really amicable. We just wanted different things in life." 3 years. They dated for 3 years and apparently maintained such a close friendship that she was texting him about personal problems on weekend mornings while he was in bed with his current girlfriend. But the part that really bothered me wasn't that they were still in contact. It was that Logan had never mentioned her before. 6 months of dating, and I'd never heard the name of someone who was apparently important enough in his life to warrant immediate responses to her texts. That Sunday morning, I watched Logan spend 20 minutes crafting responses to Madison's messages about her job stress, offering advice and emotional support with the kind of focused attention I thought was reserved for our relationship. And that's when I realized that maybe I didn't know my boyfriend as well as I thought I did. After the Sunday morning revelation about Madison, I tried really hard to be the cool, understanding girlfriend who doesn't get jealous about ex-relationships. I mean, I'm 25 years old, not 15. I understand that people have romantic histories, that breakups don't always end in burning hatred, and that maintaining friendships with exes can be totally normal and healthy. But something about the whole situation felt off, and it wasn't just my insecurity talking. Over the next few weeks, I started paying more attention to Logan's phone habits, and what I discovered was honestly disturbing. Madison wasn't just texting him occasionally about major life events or casual catch-ups. she was texting him constantly. Every single day, multiple times a day, about everything from her morning coffee choices to her work drama, to her family issues, to her dating life. Yes, her dating life. Logan's ex-girlfriend was telling him about her Bumble dates and asking for his advice on men she was interested in. And Logan was responding with detailed, thoughtful messages, offering emotional support and relationship guidance. I know this because Logan's not particularly secretive with his phone. He'll leave it unlocked on the counter while he's showering or cooking dinner. And I started glancing at his notifications when they popped up, not proud of it, but I was trying to understand what kind of friendship requires constant daily communication. What I saw made my stomach drop. Messages like, had the worst day at work. My boss is such a micromanaging nightmare. I don't know how I'm going to get through this week. Thanks for listening last night. You always know exactly what to say to make me feel better. I'm so lucky to have you in my life. Do you think I should go out with this guy from Tinder? He seems nice, but something feels off. What's your read on this? And Logan's responses were intense. Long, thoughtful paragraphs analyzing her work situation, offering detailed advice about her dating life, providing emotional support for every minor inconvenience in her day. He was putting more emotional labor into his relationship with his ex than some people put into their actual romantic relationships. But the message that really got to me came on a Tuesday evening when we were making dinner together. Logan's phone buzzed, and I glanced at the notification. I miss you. I know I shouldn't say that, but I had such a vivid dream about us last night, and I can't stop thinking about it. Logan saw the message, quickly dismissed the notification, and continued chopping vegetables like nothing had happened. I stood there stirring pasta sauce, trying to process what I'd just seen. His ex-girlfriend had just told him she missed him and was having dreams about him, and his reaction was to ignore it and keep making dinner with his current girlfriend. Was that Madison? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Yeah, she's just having a rough day, Logan replied, without looking up from his cutting board. A rough day that involved dreaming about her ex-boyfriend and telling him she missed him. Sure, totally normal friendship behavior. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the daily texts, the constant emotional support, the intimate tone of their conversations, and Logan's complete unwillingness to acknowledge that any of it might be inappropriate. I felt like I was going crazy, questioning whether I was being unreasonably jealous, or if this situation was actually as weird as it seemed. The breaking point came the following weekend. Logan and I had planned to spend Saturday together, farmers market, hiking, maybe checking out that new brewery we'd been talking about. Normal couple stuff that I was really looking forward to after a stressful week at work. But Saturday morning, Logan's phone started ringing at 7 a.m. Madison was was having some kind of crisis with her roommate situation and needed to talk immediately. Logan spent 2 hours on the phone with her, pacing around his apartment, offering advice and emotional support, while I sat on his couch, feeling like a third wheel in my own relationship. When he finally hung up, he looked emotionally drained and distracted. "Everything okay?" I asked, even though it clearly wasn't. "Yeah, Madison's just dealing with some roommate drama. Her living situation is really toxic right now, and she needed to vent. She needed to vent for 2 hours to her ex-boyfriend, while he was supposed to be spending time with his current girlfriend." "Logan, can we talk about this?" I said, trying to keep my tone calm and non-accusatory. "I'm starting to feel a little uncomfortable with how often Madison contacts you for emotional support." His reaction was immediate and defensive. "Uncomfortable? Avery, she's one of my closest friends. She doesn't have a lot of people she can talk to about personal stuff. Closest friends." His ex-girlfriend was one of his closest friends, and apparently her emotional needs took priority over our relationship plans. "I understand that," I said, "but you guys text every single day. She calls you for every minor problem, and it feels like she's getting boyfriend-level emotional support from you, while I'm sitting here feeling like I'm competing for your attention." But that's when Logan's expression shifted from defensive to annoyed. "Avery, you're being insecure about a friendship. Madison and I have been friends for years. Just because we used to date doesn't mean there's anything inappropriate happening." Insecure. There it was, the word designed to shut down any reasonable concerns about appropriate boundaries in relationships. "It's not about you being friends," I tried to explain. "It's about the level of emotional intimacy and the fact that she seems to come to you for everything instead of building a support system that doesn't include her ex-boyfriend." But Logan wasn't interested in hearing my perspective. As far as he was concerned, I was just a jealous girlfriend trying to control his friendships, and any discomfort I felt was my problem to deal with, not his responsibility to address. That Saturday, our romantic day together was completely derailed by Madison's roommate drama, and Logan spent the entire afternoon distracted and emotionally unavailable because he was worried about her situation, and I realized that this wasn't going to get better on its own. After that ruined Saturday and Logan's dismissal of my concerns as insecurity, I decided I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I'm not normally the type of person who goes digging through someone's personal life, but I felt like I was living in some kind of alternate reality where everyone pretended this situation was normal except me. I started paying closer attention to the patterns of Logan's communication with Madison, and what I discovered was honestly jaw-dropping. This wasn't just daily casual conversation between friends. This was a full-blown emotional relationship that happened to exist alongside our romantic relationship. Logan's morning routine, I realized, included texting Madison before he even got out of bed. Good morning messages, checking in on whatever crisis she was dealing with from the previous day, asking about her plans. Then throughout the day, there would be constant back and forth about work stress, family drama, dating updates, random thoughts, funny memes, inside jokes from their college years, and the evening calls. Oh, the evening calls. At least 3 times a week, Madison would call Logan after dinner for what he called catch-up conversations that would last anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours. Logan would take these calls in his bedroom or step outside if I was at his place, claiming he needed privacy to be a good friend. Privacy to talk to his ex-girlfriend while his current girlfriend sat in the living room, feeling like she was intruding on something intimate. But what really opened my eyes was when I started noticing how these conversations affected Logan emotionally. After Madison's calls, he'd be in a completely different mood, either energized and happy if she was doing well, or distant and worried if she was going through something difficult. His emotional state was directly tied to his ex-girlfriend's well-being in a way that seemed way more intense than friendship. The breaking point of my investigation came when I finally worked up the courage to ask Logan directly about the nature of their relationship. Logan, can you help me understand something? What does your friendship with Madison give you that your other friendships don't? He looked confused by the question. What do you mean? I mean, you have other close friends, but you don't text them every day or take 2-hour phone calls with them multiple times a week. What's different about your friendship with Madison? Logan got that defensive expression again. Madison and I have a deeper connection because of our history. We understand each other in a way that's hard to explain to people who haven't experienced it. A deeper connection because of their history. He was literally describing an emotional bond with his ex-girlfriend that was more intimate than any of his other friendships, and somehow expecting me to be okay with that. Logan, that sounds less like friendship and more like, I don't know, emotional dependency or an unresolved attachment. Wrong thing to say. Logan's defensiveness turned into anger. Avery, you're psychoanalyzing a friendship that you don't understand. Madison and I care about each other. We support each other. And that's what good friends do. The fact that we used to date doesn't make our friendship inappropriate. But then I asked the question that changed everything. Have you told Madison about me? The silence that followed was deafening. Of course she knows about you, Logan said, but his tone was weird, evasive. What does she know about me? Does she know we've been together for 8 months? Does she know you're in a serious relationship? More silence. Logan, what exactly have you told Madison about our relationship? Finally, he admitted the truth. Madison knew he was seeing someone, but didn't know details about how serious we were or how long we'd been together. Logan had kept our relationship vague in his conversations with her because he didn't want to make her feel bad about being single. didn't want to make her feel bad about being single, so he'd essentially hidden the fact that he was in a committed relationship from his ex-girlfriend to protect her feelings about her own dating life. Logan, we've been together for 8 months. We spend most weekends together. We've met each other's families. We've talked about moving in together. How is that information that would make Madison feel bad? Logan looked uncomfortable. She's been having a hard time with dating lately, and I didn't want to rub my happiness in her face, right? Because being honest about his relationship status would be rubbing his happiness in her face to his ex-girlfriend, who texts him every day and calls him multiple times a week for emotional support. That's when I realized the full scope of what I was dealing with. Logan wasn't just maintaining a friendship with his ex. He was maintaining an emotional relationship with her, while keeping our actual relationship semi-secret, so she wouldn't feel threatened or replaced. Logan, this isn't normal friendship behavior. Friends don't hide their romantic relationships from each other to protect feelings. Friends celebrate when each other find happiness. But Logan wasn't hearing it. As far as he was concerned, his relationship with Madison was a beautiful, supportive friendship that I was trying to destroy because of my own insecurities and jealousy. The conversation ended with Logan accusing me of being controlling and trying to isolate him from his support system. Because apparently, asking your boyfriend to be honest about his relationship status with his ex-girlfriend is controlling behavior. That night, I went home to my own apartment and did something I'd never done before in a relationship. I started seriously considering whether this was a deal breaker, because I was starting to realize that I wasn't just competing with Madison for Logan's attention. I was competing with an idealized version of their past relationship that Logan wasn't ready to let go of. After discovering that Logan had been keeping our relationship intentionally vague to his ex-girlfriend for 8 months, I knew I had to have a serious, boundary-setting conversation. I spent 2 days thinking about how to approach it without sounding accusatory or controlling, because Logan had already made it clear that any concerns about Madison would be dismissed as jealousy. I decided to focus on transparency and honesty rather than trying to dictate his friendships. Reasonable approach, right? Wrong. So incredibly wrong. I went over to Logan's apartment on a Wednesday evening, armed with what I thought was a calm, rational request for more openness in our relationship. Logan, I've been thinking about our conversation the other day, and I think I figured out what's bothering me about the Madison situation. He immediately tensed up. Avery, we've already talked about this. I'm not going to end a friendship because you're uncomfortable with it. I'm not asking you to end the friendship, I said carefully. I'm asking for more transparency. If Madison is really just a friend, then she should know about our relationship. All of it. How long we've been together. How serious we are. The fact that we're talking about moving in together. Logan's response was immediate and defensive. Why does she need to know details about our relationship? That's between us, not her, because friends share important things about their lives with each other. If I had a close male friend who I talked to every day, wouldn't you want him to know that I'm in a committed relationship? Wouldn't it seem weird if I kept that information vague? Logan stared at me for a moment, and I could see him trying to figure out how to spin this into me being unreasonable. Avery, you're making this into something it's not. Madison knows I'm dating someone. She doesn't need a full relationship resume. Logan, yesterday you spent an hour on the phone giving her dating advice. Don't you think it's relevant for her to know that the person giving her relationship guidance is in a serious, committed relationship himself? And that's when Logan pulled out the big guns. Complete gaslighting, disguised as psychological insight. Avery, I think you need to examine why you're so threatened by my friendship with Madison. Healthy relationships require trust. And the fact that you're trying to monitor and control my communications with a friend suggests some deeper insecurity issues. Because wanting transparency about your boyfriend's daily emotional relationship with his ex-girlfriend is a sign of psychological problems, apparently. But I wasn't backing down this time. Logan, this isn't about trust or insecurity. This is about appropriate boundaries. You're giving emotional support to your ex-girlfriend at a level that most people would consider inappropriate in a committed relationship. Inappropriate according to who? You. Based on what standard? Based on the standard that most people don't maintain daily, intimate communication with their exes while keeping their current relationships secret from those same exes. Logan's expression shifted to condescending patience, like he was explaining something obvious to a child. Avery, mature adults can maintain friendships with people they used to date. The fact that you can't handle that says more about your emotional maturity than it does about my friendship. Emotional maturity. Right. Because being comfortable with your boyfriend's secret emotional relationship with his ex-girlfriend is the hallmark of psychological sophistication. The conversation spiraled from there. Every concern I raised was met with accusations of jealousy, insecurity, or controlling behavior. Every request for transparency was framed as an attack on his autonomy and friendship. Every example I gave of boundary issues was dismissed as me creating problems where none existed. But the worst part was when Logan started rewriting the history of our entire relationship to support his narrative. Avery, you've been weird about Madison since the day you found out she existed. You've never even tried to be supportive of our friendship. You just immediately decided she was a threat and started looking for reasons to be upset. Since the day I found out she existed. You mean the day, 6 months into our relationship, when I discovered that my boyfriend had been in daily contact with his ex-girlfriend without ever mentioning her. Yeah, I was weird about suddenly learning that a significant person existed in my boyfriend's life. Logan, I was surprised because you'd never mentioned her before. In 6 months of dating, you'd never once brought up someone you apparently talk to every single day. I don't talk about every friendship I have. You don't tell me about every person you text, right? Except I don't text any of my exes every day. And if I did, Logan would definitely know about it, because I don't keep my relationships secret from the people I communicate with regularly. The argument lasted 2 hours and ended with Logan accusing me of trying to isolate him from his support system and being exactly like his controlling ex-girlfriend from high school. A controlling ex-girlfriend from high school. Another relationship I'd never heard about until it became useful ammunition against my unreasonable behavior. Avery, I'm starting to see a pattern here. First, you want to know who's texting me. Then you want to control what I tell people about our relationship. Now, you want to dictate how often I can talk to my friends. Do you see how this looks? How this looks like I'm a crazy, jealous girlfriend who can't handle her boyfriend having female friends, rather than someone asking for basic transparency about a daily emotional relationship with an ex-girlfriend. By the end of the conversation, Logan had somehow convinced both of us that I was the problem. I was insecure, controlling, jealous, and emotionally immature. My concerns weren't valid relationship issues. They were character flaws that I needed to work on. I left his apartment feeling gaslit, confused, and genuinely questioning whether I was losing my mind. Maybe I was being unreasonably jealous. Maybe mature adults really could maintain intimate friendships with exes without it affecting their current relationships. Maybe I was the problem. That night, I called my best friend Sarah and tried to explain the situation. Her reaction was immediate and loud. Are you kidding me right now? He talks to his ex every day, keeps your relationship secret from her, and thinks you're the problem. Avery, that's not friendship. That's emotional cheating disguised as friendship. Hearing someone else validate my concerns was like coming up for air after drowning. I wasn't crazy. This situation really was as messed up as it felt. But the damage was done. Logan had successfully reframed every legitimate concern I had as evidence of my own psychological issues. And now I was stuck in a relationship where asking for basic boundaries was considered unreasonable behavior. After that 2-hour gaslighting session, disguised as a relationship conversation, I spent the next week feeling like I was living in some kind of alternate reality. Logan had convinced me that my concerns were unreasonable, that I was being controlling and jealous, and that mature adults should be able to handle their partners' intimate friendships with exes without feeling threatened. I tried really hard to be that mature adult. I stopped asking about Madison's texts, stopped commenting when Logan took her calls, and tried to convince myself that this was normal relationship behavior that I just needed to accept. But the universe, apparently, had other plans for my delusion. Last Friday night, Logan and I were at his apartment watching a movie when his phone started ringing. Madison, of course, with another crisis that required immediate attention. Logan paused the movie and took the call in his bedroom, leaving me on the couch feeling like a third wheel in my own relationship for the 100th time. But this time was different. This time, Logan forgot to fully close his bedroom door, and I could hear his side of the conversation. What I heard made my blood run cold. "I know, baby. I know it's hard," Logan was saying in a soft, intimate tone I'd never heard him use with anyone except me. "You're going to get through this, okay? You're the strongest person I know." "Baby," he called her baby. "I wish I could be there with you right now," he continued. "I hate that you're going through this alone." I sat frozen on the couch, trying to process what I was hearing. This wasn't friendship conversation. This wasn't even close to friendship conversation. This was the way someone talks to their romantic partner, not their platonic ex. "You know I love you, right?" Logan said, and my heart literally stopped. "I'll always love you, Mads. That's never going to change. I love you." Present tense. Always will. To his ex-girlfriend, while his current girlfriend sat in the living room. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Logan providing emotional support in the most intimate, romantic tone possible. He was speaking to Madison the way I thought he spoke only to me, with deep affection, romantic concern, and obvious emotional attachment. When he finally hung up and came back to the living room, Logan acted like nothing unusual had happened. "Sorry about that. Madison's having family drama with her parents." I stared at him, trying to figure out how to address what I'd just heard without admitting I'd been eavesdropping. "Logan, can I ask you something honestly?" "Sure," he said, settling back onto the couch like we were about to resume our normal movie night. "Are you still in love with Madison?" The question hung in the air for what felt like hours. Logan's face went through about 6 different expressions before settling on defensive anger. "Where is this coming from? We've already talked about this, Avery. Madison and I are friends. Logan, I just heard you tell her you love her on the phone," in a tone that sounded nothing like friendship. His face went pale. "You were listening to my private conversation. Your door was open, and you weren't exactly whispering. Answer the question. Are you still in love with Madison?" That's when Logan did something I wasn't expecting. He broke down completely. Not angry defensiveness, not more gaslighting, just pure emotional collapse. He put his head in his hands and started crying. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I saw him be genuinely vulnerable about the situation. "I don't know," he whispered. "I don't know how I feel about her. We have this connection that I can't explain, and I can't seem to let go of it. Finally, some honest communication about what was actually happening. Logan, you've been emotionally involved with 2 people at the same time for 8 months. That's not fair to me, and it's not fair to Madison. I know, he said, still crying. I know it's messed up, but I don't know how to stop. Every time I try to create distance, she has some crisis or emergency, and I can't just abandon her. Abandon her. Like setting appropriate boundaries with an ex-girlfriend while in a committed relationship was abandonment rather than basic adult behavior. Logan, you can't maintain a romantic emotional relationship with your ex-girlfriend while dating me. That's not how committed relationships work. He looked up at me with red eyes and said the words that ended our relationship, but I can't choose between you. I love you both differently, but I love you both. Why can't that be okay? Why can't that be okay? Because that's not how monogamous relationships work, Logan. Because asking someone to share their partner's emotional intimacy with an ex-girlfriend isn't reasonable. Because love isn't enough when someone refuses to prioritize their current relationship over their past one. Logan, you need to figure out what you actually want. Because what you're asking for isn't a relationship. It's asking me to be okay with being your secondary emotional connection, while Madison gets to be your primary one. That night ended with Logan admitting that he wasn't ready to cut emotional ties with Madison, and me realizing that I wasn't willing to be in a relationship where I had to compete with my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend for emotional priority. We broke up. Or rather, I broke up with him while he begged me to be patient, while he figured things out. But the story doesn't end there, because apparently, Logan's idea of figuring things out was something I never saw coming. So that was 3 weeks ago, and honestly, I thought the Logan chapter of my life was over. We'd broken up. I'd started the process of moving on, and I was finally starting to feel like I'd made the right decision. The constant anxiety about Madison was gone. The feeling of competing for my own boyfriend's attention was over, and I could focus on rebuilding my sense of what normal relationships should look like. I blocked Logan on social media, deleted his number from my phone, and started therapy to work through the gaslighting and manipulation I'd experienced. My therapist confirmed what my friends had been telling me for months, that Logan's relationship with Madison was emotional cheating, and that his refusal to set boundaries was a fundamental incompatibility with committed partnership. I was healing, moving forward, and genuinely starting to feel like myself again. Then yesterday happened, and I honestly don't know what to think anymore. I was at a coffee shop near my apartment, working on a freelance design project, when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around to find Madison standing there, looking nervous and uncomfortable. Madison, the ex-girlfriend I'd never actually met, despite her dominating my relationship for 8 months. "Are you Avery?" she asked. Logan's ex-girlfriend. I nodded, completely confused about why she was approaching me and how she'd even recognized me. "Can I sit down? I think we need to talk." What followed was the most surreal conversation of my entire life. Madison had found out about our breakup when Logan called her, crying, to tell her that I'd forced him to choose between his friendship with her and our relationship. According to Logan, I was a jealous, controlling girlfriend who couldn't handle him having female friends and had ultimatumed him into ending their friendship. But here's the kicker. Madison had no idea that Logan had been telling her he loved her, calling her baby, or maintaining the level of emotional intimacy that had destroyed our relationship. Avery, I need you to understand something, she said, looking genuinely distressed. I thought Logan and I were just friends. Yes, we talked every day. And yes, I relied on him for emotional support. But I had no idea he was. I didn't know he was still romantically attached to me. She'd thought their daily conversations were normal friendship check-ins. She'd assumed his emotional availability meant he was just a caring friend. She'd interpreted his secrecy about our relationship as him being private, not as him maintaining romantic ambiguity. When Logan called me crying about your breakup, something felt wrong, she continued. He was devastated in a way that seemed disproportionate to losing a friendship. So I started asking questions about your relationship, and the more details he shared, the more I realized how inappropriate our dynamic had been. Madison had done her own investigation and discovered that Logan had been essentially maintaining two emotional relationships simultaneously while being fully honest with neither of us about what was happening. Avery, I am so sorry. I had no idea that Logan was telling you our friendship was causing problems, and I had no idea he was keeping the seriousness of your relationship from me. If I'd known, I would have stepped back immediately, but the real revelation was yet to come. There's something else you need to know, Madison said, looking uncomfortable. After our conversation about the breakup, Logan asked if we could try again romantically. Since he was single now, he said losing you had made him realize that I was the person he really wanted to be with. Logan had used our breakup as an opportunity to pursue his ex-girlfriend romantically, confirming everything I'd suspected about his true feelings. I told him no, Madison continued quickly. Not just because I'm not interested in him that way anymore, but because the whole situation made me realize how manipulative and dishonest he'd been with both of us. I don't want to be with someone who handles relationships the way Logan handled this. Madison had rejected Logan's romantic advances and told him she needed space to process how he'd manipulated their friendship and my relationship. She'd reached out to me because she felt guilty about unknowingly participating in emotional infidelity and wanted to apologize. I know this doesn't fix anything, she said, but I wanted you to know that you weren't crazy and you weren't controlling. Logan created this situation by being dishonest with both of us about what he wanted and what was happening. After she left, I sat in that coffee shop for 2 hours, trying to process everything she'd told me. Logan had gaslighted me for months, convincing me that my concerns were jealousy and insecurity, when the reality was that he was maintaining romantic feelings for his ex-girlfriend while lying to both of us about the nature of his relationships. Even worse, when forced to choose, he'd chosen Madison, the same person he'd spent months telling me was just a friend, and that I was being unreasonable to worry about. The validation felt incredible, but also devastating. I'd been right all along, but I'd allowed myself to be manipulated into believing I was the problem. Update. Logan texted me yesterday from a new number, since I'd blocked his old one, asking if we could work things out. Since his attempt to reconnect with Madison hadn't worked, he said he'd realized that I was the one he really wanted to be with, and that he was ready to prioritize our relationship now. The audacity is breathtaking. He manipulated me for 8 months, gaslighted me into believing I was controlling and jealous, broke up with me to pursue his ex-girlfriend, got rejected by said ex-girlfriend, and now wants me back as his second choice. My friends think I should ignore him completely. My therapist thinks this is a perfect example of manipulative behavior, and that any response would just encourage more contact. Madison, who gave me her number in case I wanted to talk more about the situation, thinks Logan is showing his true character, and that both of us are better off without him. But I'm honestly struggling with how to process all of this. On one hand, I feel vindicated that my instincts were right, and that I wasn't the crazy, jealous girlfriend Logan made me believe I was. On the other hand, I'm devastated that I wasted 8 months of my life on someone who was never fully committed to our relationship, and who actively manipulated me when I tried to address legitimate concerns. So Reddit, here's my question. How do you move forward after discovering that everything you suspected about your relationship was true, but you were gaslit into believing you were the problem? How do you trust your instincts in future relationships when someone you loved convinced you that your reasonable concerns were character flaws? And what would you do about Logan's attempt to reconcile now that his first choice has rejected him? Part of me wants to tell him exactly what I think of his manipulation and lies. Part of me wants to ignore him completely. Part of me is honestly tempted to ask him how it feels to be someone's second choice, since that's what he made me feel like for 8 months. Because the more I think about it, the more I realize that Logan didn't just emotionally cheat. He systematically destroyed my ability to trust my own perceptions about relationships. And I'm not sure how you come back from that kind of psychological damage.